30,000 feet. The hiss of steaming liquid broke the cabin's calm as boiling coffee splashed across the face of 11-year-old Caleb Bryant. He gasped, jerking back against his seat, eyes wide in shock and pain as the searing heat hit his cheek and dripped down his shirt. Across the narrow seat divide, Charles Redford didn't flinch. In fact, he smirked. "Accidents happen, boy," he muttered loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. No one moved, except for Lena Matthews. The lead flight attendant had been quietly observing the exchange from the galley, her hands folded over the service card. Now, she stepped forward with quiet purpose, her expression unreadable, though a storm swirled behind her eyes. "Sir," she said with practiced calm, "I'm going to need you to come with me." Now, neither of them knew it yet, but that moment 30,000 feet above the Atlantic would explode into national outrage. Careers would end. Laws would change. And a corporation built on silence and privilege would finally be forced to answer. But none of that had happened yet. Back on the ground, only hours before, Caleb had stood with his mother, Aisha Bryant, in the chaos of Chicago O'Hare. Travelers surged past in waves, the voices of gate agents echoing overhead, and the scent of coffee and jet fuel hung in the air. "Remember to thank Dr. Molina when we land," Aisha said, smoothing her blazer with one hand and holding Caleb's hand with the other. "I will," Caleb said, eyes shining. He clutched his carry-on, which held not toys or tablets, but a worn chess set and strategy guides he'd practically memorized. Today was everything. He'd earned a scholarship to the National Youth Chess Championship in New York City, beating competitors from elite prep academies. All at just 11. Aisha, a single mother and civil rights attorney, had worked countless overtime hours to make sure he could chase his dream. But dreams ran headfirst into systems. At the Atlantic Aero check-in desk, the attendant frowned. "That's odd. Your seats have been moved to standby status." "That's impossible," Aisha said, carefully polite. "We confirmed yesterday. We got our boarding passes via email." The attendant shrugged. "System shows your seats were released." "It happens." They were shuffled to the standby area, while white passengers who arrived after them checked in and passed through without a hitch. When Aisha presented their digital confirmations again, the gate agent smiled with that tight, patronizing professionalism. "Ma'am, confirmations don't guarantee seats." "I've flown enough to know they do," Aisha replied. Her tone was quiet, sharp, controlled. Eventually, they were allowed to board at last. But it wasn't over. "I'm sorry, ma'am. We had to reconfigure seating," a flight attendant said at the door. "Your son will be in seat 7B, and you'll be in 29D. "He's 11, Aisha protested. "We booked together. Months ago. The flight's full." "Nothing we can do," came the reply. Caleb looked up at his mother. "It's okay, Mom. It's just a few hours." She knelt and whispered, "Keep your head up. Be polite. And if anything makes you feel unsafe, press the button." Immediately, Caleb nodded solemnly, his heart pounding as he followed the flight attendant to row 7. He was sandwiched between two grown men. One of them was Charles Redford. Charles had boarded late, irritated from the beginning. In his mid-50s, dressed in a designer suit and trailing the scent of a $400 cologne, he glanced at Caleb like someone had tracked mud across his Persian rug. "I believe you're in my seat," Charles said. Caleb looked at his boarding pass. "It says 7B, sir." Charles grunted and flagged down a flight attendant. "This is a mistake. I'm a titanium member. I don't sit next to children." Caleb handed over his pass carefully. The flight attendant confirmed it. Charles would have to sit in 7C. "Might be some new quota system," he muttered as he took the seat. Affirmative action for airlines. Caleb stared down at his chess book, pretending not to hear. But Charles didn't stop. During takeoff, he made 4 phone calls, each louder than the last. Mergers, acquisitions, millions thrown around like marbles. Then came the armrest war. Charles slowly expanded. Documents, elbows, legs. Caleb folded inward, shrinking himself. Lena Matthews watched. She'd seen this pattern before. The slow, calculated erosion of space, dignity, and comfort. She remembered it from childhood. She'd lived it, and she saw it clearly now. "Water, please," Caleb whispered during drink service. She gave him 2 cookies and smiled. "For champions." Charles snapped his fingers. "Scotch. Double." Lena smiled politely. "I'll return shortly, sir. We're serving by row." Charles bristled. "Do you know who I am?" "You're a valued passenger," she replied, "and you'll be served in order." Hours passed. The sky darkened outside the window. Charles's behavior grew worse. He sipped drink after drink and muttered louder. When meal service came, he deliberately knocked Caleb's tray, sending orange juice across his math sheet. "Oh," Caleb exclaimed softly. "Be more careful," Charles scolded. "It wasn't." "Accidents happen," Charles said with a grin, handing him one napkin. Lena saw it. Everyone did. No one moved. Then came a coffee. Lena returned with a fresh pot, serving Caleb his water first. As she poured Charles's coffee, she warned, "It's very hot." He smiled thinly. Minutes later, Caleb reached for his pencil. As he leaned forward, Charles tilted his cup. Coffee cascaded across Caleb's face and chest. The boy gasped, bolting upright as pain lit across his skin. "He bumped me," Charles declared loudly. "Kids, no discipline." Everyone saw. No one moved. Except Lena. She rushed forward, pressed a cold bottle against Caleb's burns, and helped him to the lavatory. "These are first-degree burns. Possibly worse." "Please don't make it worse," Caleb whispered. "I'm okay." "No, you're not," Lena said softly. "And you didn't do anything wrong." She took photos, documented everything. Then she confronted Charles in the galley. "I saw what you did," she said. He smirked. "It was an accident. And who do you think they'll believe? Me or the black attendant on probation with a recent HR complaint?" Lena didn't flinch. "I'm changing your seat and filing a full report. This will end your career." "No, Mr. Redford. You ended yours when you scalded a child." When Charles was relocated to row 29, he exploded. "She's playing the race card," he shouted. The cabin shifted. Some nodded. Others looked away. But cracks had formed. Caleb sat alone now, red marks on his skin. A few passengers whispered. A few made eye contact. And from the back, a woman rose. Aisha Bryant. She stormed past Rose, eyes locked on her son. "You need to return to your seat." The male attendant blocked her path. "Don't touch me," Aisha said. "My son was assaulted." Lena appeared. "I'll escort her." In row 7, Aisha fell to her knees, examining Caleb's burns. "Who did this?" "Charles Redford." A woman leaned across the aisle. "He's with Redford Asset Group," said it loud and clear. Aisha's eyes narrowed. "We won a racial discrimination case against that firm last year." I led it. Recognition dawned on her. Charles had known exactly who Caleb was. "Lena, I need the air marshal and the captain." "Now." Lena nodded. "Already notified." Passengers began to stir. "I saw it," said one businessman. "He did it on purpose." "I have video," said a teenager. "I was recording for my project." "I'll testify," said an elderly woman. "I regret staying silent." The captain, a veteran named Lopez, stepped from the cockpit. "What's happening?" Lena briefed him. "You followed protocol," Lopez said. "We'll notify authorities." But word spread fast. Corporate execs from Atlantic Aero radioed Inno police, no report. "Classify it as a customer service misunderstanding. Escort Redford to VIP." Lena was told to report to the station manager immediately after landing. Charles smirked again, but Aisha wasn't done. Through a retired judge's borrowed phone, she contacted Port Authority police directly. TSA, media, advocacy groups. By landing, multiple cruisers waited at the gate. Atlantic tried to rush Charles out a private exit. Too late. The teenager's video was already viral. Hashtag flying while black. When airline security tried separating Aisha and Caleb, she invoked the law loudly. "I am his legal guardian. Attempting to separate us is unlawful detention." Media surged. Phones raised. A medic team arrived. Caleb was treated. Port Authority arrested Charles at the jet bridge. Inside, Lena was escorted to a small office. "We need your phone," said the station manager. "You'll need a court order she replied calmly. You can fire me, but you can't silence me. At the same moment, cameras captured Charles being led away in cuffs, face twisted in disbelief. Atlantic Arrow launched a cover-up campaign. They suspended Lena, flagged her HR record, hinted at past performance issues. Caleb was harassed online. Aisha's old college protest arrest mysteriously resurfaced. But they kept fighting. Whistleblowers came forward. Passengers shared stories. 3 months later, Lena testified before Congress. Aisha did too. So did Caleb. When the coffee hit me, it hurt, he said. But when everyone stayed quiet, that hurt worse. Charles Redford was charged. Lost his job. The airline faced lawsuits, resignations, and public backlash. 6 months later, Lena stood at the White House as the Safe Skies for All Act was signed into law. Aisha helped launch a legal advocacy branch. Caleb, tall and quiet, returned to chess and won. And the system that had once tried to bury them, it had been forced at last to see